via one of these joint purchasing methods. Typically, this training lasts about an hour. We've condensed the slides for expediency today. And while I don't foresee this presentation lasting an hour, we do have a lot of information to cover. We budgeted enough time for questions at the end. So we ask that you allow us to get through the slides in a timely manner. And then we can circle back around to any questions that you all may have. If you do have a burning question and don't want to forget it, feel free to type your question into the chat box. Sandy will be on standby to respond to those questions throughout the presentation. If everyone can take a moment to mute their microphones. I'm hearing some feedback from calling user 13 or 113. Let's go ahead and jump on in. All right, so just a brief background on our program. UP ensures that state agencies comply with the Governmental Joint Purchasing Act. Joint and cooperative purchasing occurs when two or more units of government conduct a single procurement and share the resulting contract. This type of procurement has many benefits to the state agencies. These contracts produce lower prices, reduce administrative costs, are convenient, and save time. UP's priority is to make more joint purchase contracts available to state agencies, local units of government, and qualified not-for-profits. UP ensures agencies and taxpayers that all available contracts were procured ethically and in accordance with state laws. So on this side, you can see some of our most recent performance metrics with the different types of joint purchasing methods that we do. So it's just always helpful to take a look back at what we've done. So the Governmental Joint Purchasing Act covers joint purchases between all Illinois governmental units, including those outside of our CPO's jurisdiction. But today we're going to focus on the joint purchasing methods available to you state agencies under the Chief Procurement Office for General Services umbrella. Just for everyone's edification, when you hear discussions around joint purchasing, you often hear the terms governmental unit and qualified not-for-profit agency. Generally speaking, a governmental unit can be the state of Illinois, state agencies as defined by the code, officers of the state, public authorities with the power to tax, or public entities created by statute. Qualified not-for-profits are not-for-profit agencies pursuant to the code, and they either act pursuant to a board established by local government or they receive some type of grant funds from a state or local government. So those terms, governmental unit and qualified not-for-profits, are used interchangeably with joint purchasing. So I just wanted to give everyone a brief definition as we move forward. I'm a visual learner, so it's always helpful for me when learning about anything as complex as joint purchasing to break it down using a visual map. So this slide shows the joint purchasing method map, and it displays where each joint purchasing method branches from and which methods are related. So when we're talking about joint purchasing methods available to state agency within Ellen's jurisdiction and under the Governmental Joint Purchasing Act, we're really talking about two major avenues: agency-led joint purchases and cooperative-led joint purchases. And so we're going to focus on those two main clusters today. The main difference between the two clusters: your agency-led joint purchasing methods are when your agency wants to lead the procurement from start to finish. So solicitation, award, contract, that is all on the agency to do. Whereas cooperative-led joint purchasing methods are led by a cooperative, a consortium, a group purchasing organization, or a federal agency. And so they handle it for a certain, up to a certain point, and then Illinois takes it from that point. So those are the two big differences between your two clusters. So first is agency-led joint purchasing methods. The agency-led joint purchasing methods are broken down into joint purchase master contracts, often referred to as JPMCs, or your joint purchase contracts. I'll give you a brief overview about joint purchase contracts today. These aren't done as often nowadays, but I still think it's helpful for agencies to get an understanding of what exactly goes into joint purchase contracts. So joint purchase contracts allow two or more agencies to aggregate their need via competitive solicitations or other procurement methods like the ones listed here. Joint purchases are comprised of a lead agency and one or more participating agencies. The lead agency is responsible for conducting the procurement, but both the lead and participating agencies are responsible for their own notices of award and their own contracts. For example, EPA can enter into a joint purchase with DHS to procure a certain set of supplies or services. As the lead agency, EPA will conduct either the competitive solicitation, sole source procurement, or emergency procurement. As a participating agency, DHS will publish an intent to participate in the joint purchase on bid buy, and both agencies will complete individual notices of award and individual contracts with the winning vendor. So let's take a look at some of the joint purchase requirements for the lead agency. I'll continue with the EPA DHS scenario from the previous slide. First and foremost, as the lead agency, EPA needs to ensure the bid by short description is reflective of who is leading and who is participating. So in this example, the bid by short description would need to list this as a JP contract led by EPA and participated in by DHS for whatever supplies and services. When the lead agency in this puts out the joint purchase solicitation, the solicitation brief description, goals section, and supplemental joint purchasing terms all need to outline who the lead and participating agencies are. Additionally, when the lead agency drafts its notice of award, your SPO will be verifying that the lead and participating agencies referenced in the solicitation and bid buy are mentioned in the notice of award as well. The contract needs to be consistent with bid buy, the solicitation, and the notice of award. The contract goal section and supplemental provisions should all be consistent. A joint purchasing authorization will need to be executed once the contract is finalized and the agency is ready to submit the vendor-signed contract for approval. On that joint purchasing authorization, the lead agency must maintain the same consistency required for the solicitation, notice of award, and contract. Once the joint purchasing authorization is executed, the bid buy purchase order can be approved, and the executed contract and authorizations can be attached to the purchase order via change order. And now all these additional terms and documents that I'm saying are requirements are also found on our forms and templates page and are also listed on our UP job aids. So all this information that I'm giving you, there are resources on our pages to help remind you of exactly what is required and at what stage. So let's move on to the joint purchasing requirements for the participating agency or agencies depending on the scenario. So this is DHS in this scenario. So the participating agency is required to have their own bid by requisition, bid, and purchase order. This is necessary with joint purchase contracts because each agency is taking on their own contract with the awarded vendor for a certain amount of money. Neither agency is obligated by the other. Therefore, the participating agency is required to have a bid by short description identifying the lead agency and themselves as the participating agency. Additionally, the participating agency must provide an intent to participate statement. That document must be completed and attached to the requisition before submitting for approval. The participating agency is also going to have its own notice of award with the same description information as the lead agency's notice of award. There will be subtle differences like the award amount and general agency heading information. Same thing with the contract. The contract must call out its joint purchase status, list the lead agency, provide the participating agencies, and maintain consistency within the goal and supplemental joint purchasing terms sections. The participating agency for a joint purchase contract does not have to obtain its own joint purchasing authorization, but it does need to attach the lead agency's joint purchasing authorization to its bid buy purchase order. Before we continue, I would like to briefly touch on joint purchase renewals. Please note when renewing a joint purchase contract resulting from a competitive solicitation, an additional joint purchasing authorization is necessary before the renewal contract can be approved for execution. Here is a screenshot of the UP joint purchasing forms and templates page. Take a look at the document highlighted by the red circle. That is the intent to participate document required for participating agencies. When you have a moment, feel free to browse this page and familiarize yourself with its contents because there are some very helpful resources available to you here. Up until this point, our joint purchasing contract discussion has been geared toward competitive solicitations, so your RFPs, your IFBs. Now it's time to really hone in on the other available joint purchase contracting methods, namely sole sources, sole economically feasible sources, and emergency joint purchases. When conducting a sole source, a sole economically feasible source, or emergency joint purchase, the previously mentioned lead agency and participating agency bid buy and intent to participate requirements are still going to apply, but there are some additional requirements. When conducting a sole source or sole economically feasible source joint purchase, the sole source justification form needs to outline the lead and participating agencies. Once you get to your sole source contract, you will need to ensure that this language is included here on the screen. Same general idea for emergency joint purchases. When conducting an emergency joint purchase, your emergency purchase statement has to outline who the lead and participating agencies are, and your emergency joint purchase contract needs to include this language. For these types of joint purchase contracts, you will have to go through and complete each section typewritten in green. When you click on the green fields, they will prompt you with what needs to go into the section. Please follow the job aids and consult with your SPO as early as possible regarding what joint purchasing terms should be included in those sole source and emergency joint purchase contracts. A joint purchasing authorization for sole source and emergency joint purchases is also required. All right, so that was a minimal overview of joint purchase contracts. Like I said, those don't happen often, but in the off chance your agency wants to team up with another agency, please feel free to reach out to UP and your SPO, and we'll be happy to walk you through the process again. So now we are jumping to one of our heavy hitters, the joint purchase master contract. I'm sure most of the agencies on today's Training Tuesday have released off of a statewide joint purchase master contract, or JPMC. Currently, DO-IT, CPOGS, CMS, and ISB are permitted to execute JPMCs without obtaining special delegation. So this portion is mostly directed to those few agencies. If a non-JPMC enabled agency finds that conducting a JPMC is the most sensible way to go, they'll need to first talk it through with their SPO and with UP, and then they will need to consult with and receive a special delegation from one of the agencies that can conduct JPMCs. As the lead of a joint purchase master contract, an agency is able to conduct RFP solicitations, IFB solicitations, sole sources, emergencies, and even small joint purchase master contracts, and make them available to all governmental units and qualified not-for-profit agencies. There are two categories of joint purchase master contracts. You have your statewide JPMCs and your multi-agency JPMCs. Statewide JPMCs are the resulting contracts from a solicitation that aggregated the needs of two or more governmental units, is definite or indefinite quantity contract against which subsequent orders can be placed. There are no restrictions on which governmental units or qualified not-for-profits can use the contract. And that third bullet point is the defining factor between statewide JPMCs and multi-agency JPMCs. Because like statewide JPMCs, multi-agency JPMCs are the resulting contracts from solicitations that aggregated the needs of two or more governmental units, are definite or indefinite quantity contracts, but multi-agency JPMCs do have restrictions regarding who can use the resulting contracts. So when you're thinking about a statewide JPMC, know that all governmental units and qualified not-for-profits can use it. It's open to everyone. Multi-agency JPMCs are limited. Only certain governmental units and or qualified not-for-profits can use the contract. So CPOGS, DO-IT, CMS, ISB all have the opportunity to make them statewide, or they can limit them to multi-agency. Now, there are certain JPMC requirements that CMS, DO-IT, CPOGS, and ISB must meet in bid by the solicitations and in their contracts, but because there are so few JPMC-enabled agencies on the call, I won't go into the specifics. We've recently done some JPMC training for DO-IT, but if any of the other JPMC agencies need that training as well, we can definitely schedule that separately. Before we move on from JPMCs, I would like to bring attention to joint purchasing authorizations. These authorizations aren't limited to JPMCs, but they are necessary with any joint purchase method aside from piggybacks and cooperative participation transfers. The purpose of the joint purchasing authorization is to get written approval from our CPO for the joint purchase. Joint purchasing authorizations are required at the PO stage in bid buy before contract execution. Your SPO will not approve your joint purchase contract for execution without an executed joint purchasing authorization. Piggybacks and cooperative participation transfers don't require JPAs, joint purchasing authorizations, because piggybacks get her authorization at the piggyback purchase request form stage, and the cooperative participation transfers. There's a form that we'll get into a little later that also has Ellen's joint purchase authorization on that form. So for piggybacks and cooperative participation transfers, you don't have to get a separate joint purchasing authorization because those are included in the forms that you need before moving on to your contract. So on this slide, you can see an example of a DO-IT joint purchase authorization for Linux products. It was an IFB JPMC. This is a good example of how any agency should complete this form. I often see when reviewing these that people put, I hereby authorize the attached joint purchase between whatever the agency is, and then they'll either insert the vendor name here or something else random there. What we're looking for is the permitted contract users in that first sentence. So just be mindful when you're filling these out. the last thing anyone wants is to go back and forth over silly mistakes on these up forms because we're supposed to be, making the process faster. So clue in your SPO as soon as possible when you're completing these forms, just so that you know that you're completing them correctly, so that there's not a whole lot of back and forth. All right, so now we're back to our map. We have completed our discussion regarding agency-led joint purchasing methods. And now we can go ahead and jump into our cooperative-led joint purchasing methods. Please note that whenever I say cooperative, I'm also including consortiums, federal agencies, and group purchasing organizations. Cooperative is just the term that people are most familiar with. Amongst the cooperative-led joint purchasing methods, there are participations and piggybacks. So we'll start our cooperative-led joint purchasing methods discussion with participations. Cooperative-led participations occur when an Illinois agency wants to participate in a cooperative solicitation and use the resulting contract with the cooperative awarded vendor, or in some cases, vendors. Cooperative participation is the preferred cooperative-led joint purchasing method over piggybacks because it allows an Illinois agency to post notice of the cooperative solicitation to Illinois vendors who are then able to bid on the cooperative opportunity. Unlike piggybacks, contracts resulting from cooperative participations can match the cooperative master contract term. In contrast, because they are the least transparent cooperative-led procurement type, piggybacks are generally limited to a year. Now, the resulting contract from a cooperative participation could be a JPMC or it could be agency specific. So it is a possibility that one of the JPMC enabled agencies are able to participate in a cooperative solicitation and have the resulting contract be a JPMC available to all governmental units and qualified not-for-profits. A couple examples of cooperative-led participations currently available to agencies are UP's cloud contracts and our mailing machine contracts. Those are contracts that UP, on behalf of the Chief Procurement Office for General Services, participated in from the beginning. The resulting contracts from those NASPO participations are multi-award JPMCs, and agencies release off of those multiple award master contracts weekly. So let's dive into the process for cooperative participation. If an agency is participating in a cooperative solicitation, the first step of the cooperative participation process is identifying the solicitation opportunity. The selected cooperative, federal agency, consortium, or group purchasing organization must be approved for state of Illinois usage and listed on the UP webpage. Typically, the cooperatives that we work with have UP on a mailing list to receive notice of upcoming solicitations. So when we receive notification of upcoming cooperative solicitations, UP will either participate ourselves or we'll reach out to agencies we think might have an interest in the supplies or services. Another way the cooperative solicitation opportunity could be identified is if an agency does its own research and finds a cooperative solicitation it wants to participate in. If that's the case, the agency should verify that there's enough time to post reasonable notice of the solicitation to Illinois vendors. Next, the agency needs to get the requisition into bid buy. The cooperative participation requisition should include a completed intent to participate form. The next slide will show you an example of an intent to participate form, but that does need to be attached at the requisition. The next step is the bid by bid. The bid ensures that notice is published to Illinois vendors. Like I mentioned earlier, the great thing about cooperative participation is that the state can publish notice of the cooperative solicitation and enable Illinois vendors an opportunity to submit bids or proposals to cooperatives. Therefore, It is important that Illinois vendors are given the best chance to successfully submit their bid or proposal. The bid by bid for cooperative participation should provide Illinois vendors at least 14 days notice before the cooperative solicitation opens. Once the Illinois agency posts notice of the solicitation opportunity to Illinois vendors and the cooperative solicitation is opened, evaluated, and awarded, the Illinois agency then needs to post the cooperative lead agency's notice of award. Once that's posted, the Illinois agency moves on to the bid tab where the Illinois specific award is made. If the cooperative lead agency awards to multiple vendors, then that will be posted on the bid. But the bid tab is where the Illinois agency posts its own notice of award. The Illinois agency may want to post a notice of award to one of the winners or multiple vendors. Either way, that determination is made on the bid tab. The draft contract should also be attached to the bid tab. If the resulting contract is a JPMC, that draft contract should include the required joint purchase master contract clauses. Once the bid tab is submitted and you've approved it, the agency will move to the PO where the draft joint purchasing authorization needs to be attached. This slide is an example of an intent to participate. This is typically what Sandy will post if we find a cooperative solicitation opportunity compelling enough to participate in, but each cooperative has different intent to participate template requirements. So please, again, I'm going to be really repetitive here. Reach out to your SPO or us if your agency wants to participate in something so that we can help ensure that the bid by entry is completed correctly. All right, moving on to something a little different. It's the cooperative participation transfer process. So in the off chance that your agency wasn't able to participate in the cooperative solicitation, but UP was able to participate on behalf of the Chief Procurement Office for General Services, then the agency is going to have to transfer that participation from UP to itself. So the first step here is for the agency to verify that UP already has posted participation and notice. Typically, the UP newsletter contains all the cooperative solicitations that UP has already posted participation and notice of. If the agency finds a contract that is located on a cooperative webpage, reach out to UP to see if maybe we participated in it in the past. If we have, then the agency will proceed with this new cooperative participation transfer process. A great example of this new process is the cooperative participation at Do It with the cooperative called The Quilt and the cooperative vendor Cogent. Initially, UP on behalf of the Chief Procurement Office for General Services posted participation and notice of a solicitation that was published, opened, and awarded by the cooperative, The Quilt. Because UP was the one who had posted the participation and the notice, Do It had to go through the cooperative participation transfer process in order to transfer that participation, award the contract for itself, and then negotiate the contract. With this process, the agency will start with a bid by requisition again. The requisition should include a completed cooperative participation transfer form. This is a new form, but it is available on our joint purchasing forms and templates page. That form provides the agency an opportunity to explain why it's wanting to use the contract, the vendor, and the cooperative. After that, the agency will move on to the bid by bid. On the bid by bid, the draft Illinois contract should be attached. The cooperative's lead agency's award should also be published to the bid via an amendment, and then the agency will move on to the bid by bid tab. On the bid tab, the Illinois specific award is made, and then the agency is good to go for its purchase order and contract execution. Currently, when the agency is doing their cooperative participation themselves, there is a need for a joint purchase authorization. But when the agency is transferring the cooperative participation from UP, the JP authorization is included in the cooperative participation transfer form. Therefore, a JP authorization is not necessary when conducting a cooperative participation transfer. So let's move forward with the cooperative participation transfer form. That form is located on our joint purchasing forms and templates page. I've got it circled here in case you ever need it. Take a look at it when you have a free moment to really understand what kind of information we're looking for with these participation transfers. There's a place for APO signature, SPO signature, and Ellen's signature as CPO. The SPO will review the form, submit it to UP, and UP will review and make a recommendation to Ellen. Once Ellen signs it, it will be returned to the SPO to provide to the agency to attach to the requisition. While we're here, let's speak quickly about releasing off multiple award master contracts. Most of the joint purchase multiple awards are results of participations. A good example of multiple award master contract participations you may be familiar with are the cloud solution and mailing machine master contracts. Releases off multiple award master contracts occur most often when an Illinois agency participates in a cooperative solicitation, the cooperative's lead agency awards to multiple vendors, and the Illinois agency determines that it is in the best interest of the state to also award to multiple vendors. For releases off multiple award master contracts, you're going to need a request for quote. Depending on your SPO, some will want to see the request for quote before you send it out to the cooperative vendors. So always check with your particular state purchasing officer to see how they want to handle it. You should give responding vendors a reasonable amount of time to provide a response to your request. The RFQ ensures agencies aren't picking and choosing cooperative vendors without considering the entire pool of awarded candidates. Once you receive the RFQ responses, you'll have to complete the request to release off a multiple award contract form. On that form, the agency will need to detail the responding vendors and provide sufficient reasoning for the vendor selection. The request to release form will be signed by the SPO. If the SPO agrees with the agency's selection, the agency can then move forward with submitting the release for approval. This slide highlights the location of the documents the agency will need to complete its release off of a multiple award master contract. They'll need the RFQ and your request to release form. All right, so we've made it back to our map. We've already learned about the cooperative-led participation joint purchasing method, and now we're going to move to piggybacks, which means that we are in the home stretch. The piggyback is also a cooperative-led joint purchasing method. Please note that a piggyback can result in joint purchase master contracts, or it can be agency specific. For example, CMS has the ability to conduct joint purchase master contract piggybacks and make them available to all governmental units and qualified not-for-profits. Or CMS can do a piggyback that only can be used by CMS. Most agencies on this call will only be conducting agency-specific piggybacks. This is an important distinction because there is a job aid for JPMC piggybacks and another one for agency-specific piggybacks. So the requirements are different. So it's important to work with your SPO to ensure you're using the correct aid. A state agency may piggyback onto a contract procured by a federal agency, consortium, group purchasing organization, or a cooperative that resulted from a procurement in which the state agency did not participate in the solicitation or award. Piggybacks are generally limited to a one-year term with very minimal exceptions. Even though the cooperative contract was procured competitively, we are trying to minimize contract opportunities that Illinois vendors who may only be monitoring the state's bulletin may not have been notified of. Additionally, these contracts were not considered for Illinois compliant BEP or VBP goals, so it's been a policy decision to promote Illinois participation as opposed to piggybacks. The selected federal agency, consortium, group purchasing organization, or cooperative must be approved for state of Illinois usage and listed on the UP webpage. If a cooperative or consortium's name does not appear on UP's webpage as a vetted and approved cooperative or consortium, before an agency requests to piggyback, it should email UP to inquire whether we've vetted and approved the cooperative for use. UP will reply to the email informing the agency of one of the following. Either the cooperative or consortium has been vetted and is approved by CPOGS for use, and we just haven't gotten it up on the website yet. The cooperative or consortium has not been vetted. Vetting will begin, and then the results of that vetting will be provided to the agency once it's complete. Or the cooperative or consortium has been vetted, but is not approved for use. An agency should not start a request for piggyback approval prior to receipt of a reply email. Currently, we have 15 approved cooperatives on our page, and that is an up-to-date list. Please also note that the CPOGS requires all cooperative contractors to have an active registration in IPG with an expiration date after the agency's contract execution. We're going to take some time to really dive into piggybacks and walk through the piggyback process from inception to execution, because we've been seeing quite a few piggybacks come through over the past couple months. So the agency's first step is to determine the need and what will best resolve that need. The agency should check to see if there is already a CMS or do-it master contract that can meet that need. If not, the agency should check to see if there are any cooperative solicitations on the street that it can participate in, ensuring a longer contract term. Only if none of those options are reasonable should the agency pursue the piggyback route and start looking at cooperative contracts that have already been executed. Once the agency determines the need, the agency should select the cooperative contract and the vendor that it wants to use. So you'll do some research, you'll look at cooperatives, federal agencies, consortiums, group purchasing organizations. You'll find an executed contract and a vendor from a cooperative that you want to use. And then you need to be very intentional with your selection, because the decision has to be defended on the piggyback purchase request form. That form will ask you why this cooperative, why this vendor, is the pricing competitive. The agency has to prove up why this cooperative and this vendor was selected. The agency's response needs to provide information to enable a determination that it is in the best interest of the state to use this contract. The agency should be able to state that it is in the best interest because, for example, the vendor has the lowest price based on market research, or the pricing represents a significant cost savings to the state from what the state is currently paying, something really justifying like that. After that is the bid by requisition. The piggyback purchase request form must be attached to the requisition. After that is the bid by bid. After that is the bid by purchase order and contract execution. And when I said that it needs to be attached to the bid by requisition, the piggyback purchase request form, it needs to be attached, completed with all signatures, which includes agency director. So once you get past the piggyback purchase request form, your bid, where you announce your award, and you're moving on to your contract, there are a couple of clauses that should be included in your piggyback contract. Before you approve the purchase order, feel free to send it to Sandy or me for a quick review. We're going to be looking to make sure that the piggyback contract includes the piggyback contract terms and conditions. That document with that language is located on the forms and templates page. We're also going to be looking for a reporting provision, which is required by statute under the Governmental Joint Purchasing Act. UP is required to report on the usage of piggyback contracts. So we like to see language similar to this section highlighted here on the page. Oftentimes, cooperative contracts will have a reporting provision in the master contract saying, reporting is subject to each state's needs, or they have to report on such and such, and that's fine. But we prefer to see contract language that is a bit more specific to our usage reporting needs. Some agencies might find this duplicative, but we want to see this particular reporting requirement clause just to ensure that those cooperative vendors are put on notice that we are going to be requesting quarterly usage reports. Once those two things are in the piggyback contract, you are good to submit to your SPO for approval. All right, so now that we've gone through all the joint purchasing methods and I've sufficiently talked your ears off, we would like to open the floor for questions. I have Sandy and I believe Joe may be on the call as well. So between the three of us, we should be able to give you some good answers.
Alex, this is Dave. I'll kick one off. I had a similar question, and someone just actually asked this, so I had made a note. Is there a minimum dollar amount on those piggybacks? That's a question that we received quite a bit.
No.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
All right, guys. I know that you guys have to have more questions than that. I know we had a lot of good questions, and there's so much information there. And honestly, for me, I'll just speak for myself. In that a lot of times, you don't realize you have these questions until you actually start to do one of these processes.
Absolutely.
So, a couple things that I would like to just add, other than being incredibly grateful for Alex to spend her time, and she and Sandy and Joe Kim are the experts on this, and just it is a new kind of world for the state of Illinois to utilize joint purchasing. So we want to. I can understand where there can be some trepidation, and but don't be afraid to jump in and ask questions about this, because now it is we can utilize this joint purchasing, and it's something that I think it's really exciting and new, and it's going to provide a lot of opportunities for agencies and to be able to make those decisions from an agency perspective. So just an enormous thank you to Alex and Sandy and Joe for being on the call today. I'm going to keep open, so keep asking questions, but I wanted to extend that thank you as well as just to add that just because it's new and you don't know enough about it doesn't mean you shouldn't dive in and ask those questions. So I'll stop talking now. So we do have a couple other questions in the chat. I don't know if Alex, you wanted to. Certainly, the piggyback is only for 1 year. I know I can handle that low hanging fruit for you, Alex. And just the reason why that piggyback, just to circle back on what Alex had already explained, the reason why it is only 1 year is because those Illinois businesses might not have been notified of that original procurement, and so for that issue, as well as there wouldn't have been potential BEP participation as well. And to add one more thing to it, it's of all of our processes, we want to be able to have those Illinois businesses be a part of those procurements. So if Illinois businesses see that that is a need for a state agency, potentially the next year there could be another procurement coming down the line that the agency could potentially do, as well as it is the least transparent of all of our procurement methods. So that's why we limit to 1 year. We wouldn't want to say, oh yeah, we're going to utilize this Massachusetts contract for the next 6 years. And so that's the reason for that.
Right. Perfect.
Hey, Dave,
Yes, sir.
there's a question in the chat that says, um, basically, how long can a participation last in years? And essentially, that is limited by when we participate, it's limited by the solicitation itself. So, depending on what cooperative is being utilized, then that can be up to the number of years that the contract allows because we have participated in it from the beginning, publicized it for Illinois vendors to be able to respond to. The contract can be for as many years as the solicitation allows. Of course, obviously being limited by our 10-year rule here in Illinois. So obviously we can't go beyond that.
Right.
Great. So just one more vote for participating on the front end of these procurements whenever possible. Thanks, Sandy.
Absolutely. And I think I see another question. Should we do piggybacks instead of competitively bidding small purchases? No, piggyback should be the last resort, the last go-to for agencies. So competitively bidding that small purchase is the way to go first.
Now, I might add too, Alex, that I will add that at the end of the line, piggybacks could be there as the last resort. So if
Yes.
we've seen this before, you put it out to small businesses because it's set aside for small businesses, right? Maybe you don't receive anything, or potentially the quotes are unrealistically high. Then you put it out to large businesses. Maybe you don't receive quotes again, or you receive that same really high quote. At that point, you would have that potential to use the piggybacks, but only after your other small purchase procurement methods have been exhausted.
Right.
And the waiver is still required.
Yes.
Correct. And the waiver is still required. Yep. Thanks, Amy.
All right. I guess we can hang around for any more additional questions, but just wanted to thank you all for engaging in this dialogue and hope to speak with you soon about joint purchasing. I know it's newer and the processes might seem a little convoluted, but that's why we have these trainings to kind of clear it up, hopefully, and know that you're SPO and we are always there as resources for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Sandy. Thanks, Joe. We're going to go ahead and sign off. This recording will be posted in the training center per usual, as well as the slides that have a couple links to the UP program. Do yourself a favor, jump in there, take a look at that published newsletter, the most recent one. And as you look into joint purchasing further, feel free to reach out to the UP team and we'll get you taken care of. Oh, hold on just a second. Another question just popped up. Do the individual agencies get credit for BEP use on these UP contracts? Alex, do you know?
I don't know off top. We take BEP with joint purchasing case by case because the statute is it provides limited interpretation for BEP requirements with joint purchasing. So I think that question was from DHS. I think Jean and Pam asked. So if you all wanted to just ask that question in the email, we'll get you an answer back, or we'll respond to that separately because it is case by case with BEP, honestly.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, everybody. Hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. Please be safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you. Bye.